So I have no excuse at this point to feel that I've been maligned. I could argue point-to-point malignancy, but overall, I've benefited, and I think that's a more respectful position to take, especially when you're talking struggling artists who would die for a stage, an opportunity. So to be humble in that, I think is something that I've needed to really work on. And I'm proud of myself to kind of go back full circle to where I started, which is I would die for the opportunity. And I try to remember that guy that looked out the window and died for a stage, and not take a place like this so beautiful for granted. And then the last part of it is to stay motivated in the Pumpkins. I think that I can't say what's going to happen tomorrow, but we've made it this far. And when you're approaching like the 30-year mark, you know, as far as from the beginning, obviously not 30 contiguous years, but 30 years, it starts to take on a different institutional glow. It's not really down to whether the last thing you did is great or bad. It's really about the sum total of what it represents. And there is something that can happen, and you've seen it with countless artists that have endured and gone through the fallow periods and come out the other side with a real kind of inner energy and charge. This beautiful thing happens, which is more about survival and the endurance of the human spirit or something. And it becomes less about, did they play well with butterfly wings? And there's that awkward period somewhere in the middle that everybody goes through, and then when they come out the other side, it becomes more of a celebration of the story. So, yes, sir?
So this is kind of a two-part question. The reissues, I think I probably speak for everyone in this room when I say that I think they just turned out beautifully. And I know the amount of work and effort that went into those projects, probably can't even put it into words. So first question is, do you feel like they were received well, beyond the fan spectrum? And then also, is Machina on the docket? Great.
Yeah, the response has been great. I would say if I was going to sum up the band's reissues up to this point, which I guess is, I could say my reissues, because I was basically the person working on them. I like that they tell the true story of the band, or the true story of my journey in the band. I like that there's a more warts and all. The albums are really, they're shiny objects. But there's something beautiful about some of the other uglinesses that we created that tell a bigger story about the band's journey. And even standing on stage and playing something like Whir, it really makes us appreciate that we took time to make these other songs and take these other chances. That's been a really great part of this. As far as Machina, we're in dispute with the parent company, Universal, and until that's settled, there's no nothing. Anybody else?
What's the irony? That the dispute would start with Machina. That's kind of
trust me, the Machina is truly a cursed album. I think we need to get like a voodoo priest to come in and sage the tapes.
I have the Machina tattoo on my left arm, if that's any concept.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I will say, obviously time has mellowed the Adore experience, and it now really receives the respect that it deserved from the beginning, which is nice. And I think Machina is slowly creeping where people really understand it's a masterful work. It's masterful not because it's likable, it's masterful because it's masterful. And just because a great director makes a weird film that nobody likes doesn't mean it's not great. And there's when you're talking about a commercial band, the commerciality of something is always the great arbiter of the judgment. Because somebody at some point comes along and say, well, if it's that fucking great, how come nobody bought it? But there are pieces of work that they're not really about sales. And Machina is a rare document of a band literally imploding. It's very rare in that regard. There are albums that sort of, you can hear the implosion behind the sounds, and that album is literally documented. The starship breaking up. So, Tim, you had a question? Yes?
Every time you play, your songs are so different from the studio, and even from
I think it starts with an emotional honesty. So you try not to play anything that you don't feel good about. And you don't take the album version of, I don't know, Today. It's not a holy document handed down by God to a monk in the desert. It's a recording of a good song that's really well done. So you don't treat it like this, we must recreate it, because the Holy Writ is in it. You see the song is sacred. And so the song is your guide. And so if you can imagine, it's like putting light through a prism. Here's the song, here's who you are today. And you shoot that energy through it and you find something different. And I think what's great about your question is, it's important that the audience see you connecting to the song. I think people come to shows just as much to watch you perform and have the emotional experience of the music, to see if your experience matches theirs on some intrinsic and intuitive level, as playing the song perfectly. I've played shows where every note is flawless and the audience is bored out of their eyes. And I've played shows where the band's sloppy and people go, that's the greatest show I've ever seen. So that tells you something. It doesn't mean it's everything, but it tells you something. Yes, sir?
How do you, as an artist, wrap your brain around it when someone is so impacted by your art that they can come up to you and say, your music literally saved my life?
Well, if you're a negative person, you remind yourself of the 50 people who aren't affected by what you do and don't give a fuck if you die tomorrow.
And what if you're a positive person?
Well, I'm not a positive person necessarily. I'm a realist. No, I think that I'm not answering your question, but I'm trying to answer it my own way. If you go to LA, you can see a lot of people who were once really famous. And you might even geek out like, oh my God, it's the guy from that show or something. And what becomes sad about it, if you get to know certain people or hang around, is they need to believe something that's not true, to give them something which is not true, which helps feed them in a particular way. If you've ever seen the movie Sunset Boulevard with Gloria Swanson, where she was once this massive star, and the great irony is that Gloria Swanson was once literally the biggest movie star in the world. So she's sort of playing obviously a cartoonish version of her own life, but I mean, that was her life. She literally went from here to here. So you meet these people, and the sadness is not that it isn't what it once was, because to achieve anything in this world in terms of entertainment for more than a few years is kind of a miracle, because it's so competitive. It literally is like that kid's game, King of the Mountain. The minute you get to the top, here they come. They just literally want to knock the hell out of you. And you see snipey comments. It's like it's this cherished Valhalla at the top of the hill. So if you're in the backside of that or something, if you need to believe that your value is connected to whether or not what you did means something to somebody, that's a setup for yourself to fail. Because let me tell you, when a parent dies, my cat died last year, no amount of, hey, you changed my life, helps me through that one at all. So that tells me it's important, but it's not that important. Because when shit really hits the fan in life, it's who's near you, what really matters. And every performer lives with this sort of kind of unexpressed fear of what happens if I can't do, be, say what I am today. And the only insurance against that is to surround yourself with people who truly love you for who you are. And that's a difficult thing to do in normal life. And I grew up in a normal home, allegedly. But I mean, I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't grow up with any rich family, or I mean, I didn't. So I remember what it was like to worry about, did dad pay alimony or whatever. So I think you can't go back. You can't suddenly become, the guy that was in high school. That's dumb. Nor do you necessarily want to be. Everybody would evolve. And you should have pride in what you've accomplished in your work, but it doesn't pay the bills. You know what I mean? The real bills. It's cool to play, and and I love these atmospheres and opportunities, but it doesn't get you through the tough times at all. Okay, yes, sir.